Welcome to Fun Fridays, everybody. I am Mel Morris. I'm going to let everybody get in here and get settled, and hopefully this might be the first Friday. I'm hoping this is the first Friday that we just like cruise through. Everything works. All the mechanics continue to happen the way they're supposed to. I'm looking online to see if we're rolling. Before I bring my very yes we are. Even though I look a little frozen right now. Yes, it's working. Okay, perfect. Oh wait, I gotta turn my sound down though. I'm doing the most right now. I apologize. Okay, there we go. Whew. I was asking too much to begin with. All right, so we are here. It is Friend Friday, the last official Friend Friday for 2020, and I couldn't end it with a better guest. I've been really excited to have her on. If you saw my email this week, she is like a hero to me as a frontline worker. I'm just, I'm just constantly in awe of her. So, just to give you a little blurb about my friend, who I like to refer to as Dr. Ish, Dr. Ish Modak, she helps working moms set boundaries and overcome overwhelm so they can thrive as parents and partners. She, besides being, I don't know where she finds the time, besides being a mom and being a medical director, she's also created a beautiful space called the Mindful Working Mom Collective, helping women, in all of those areas. So, without further ado, I'm going to switch me down. She can be on the other side. And ta-da! Now here she is.
Hi,
Hey, Ish, what's going on?
nothing much. Oh, thank you for that intro.
Let me put your name up there. Bam!
Thank you so much for that intro. That was awesome.
Yay! I'm so glad you can make it. And I will say that I was a little, given COVID, right? Like you're super busy, even without COVID. So I'm really so thankful that you were able to carve out a little bit of time to hang out here. Again, thank you for everything that you've been doing and all of your work. And how are you feeling? I will preface this by saying, you are the only person that I know thus far, personally, who's gotten the vaccine. How are
Yeah,
you feeling?
awesome.
Yay.
I got the vaccine on Monday. I mean, feeling incredibly grateful.
Yeah.
It's been so. I just have to say, I am I work in outpatient sector, but we test and we do see COVID patients, but I don't have it nearly as hard as the folks that are working in the hospital, in the ERs, in the ICU, all of those folks, and they got vaccinated as well. But yeah, I got my vaccine on Monday. I had a little bit of arm soreness for about 24 hours, and otherwise I'm feeling good and just excited. So
Yay. 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 That's very exciting. And I think, and I definitely want to ask you that because it is very important, I think, for all of us to talk about, especially in communities of color, right, about getting this vaccination. And I will be the first to admit that I am, not a fan of this current government. I'm very leery of anything that happens with President Trump in office. But I am absolutely in support of vaccination. I'm absolutely in support of, and I've tried to watch, I'm not a doctor, obviously, but I've tried to watch as much as I can to learn about, what's happening with these vaccines when they're talking about side effects and things like that. So, it's just so important for all of us to get that information. And when it's your turn, right, to make sure that we are getting these vaccinations because, I want to go back to seeing my babies again,
yeah,
and it's just, I'm ready. I'm ready for this craziness to start to transition into something a little bit better. So yes, I just want to throw that out there in the beginning. So thank you.
well, and thank you, and what I want to say from my standpoint as a physician is that the big thing is to know information.
Right.
not little headlines really, but just to really know the information so that people can make an informed choice
Mhm.
based off of their value system and what they, what they need to do to feel protected.
Right.
This is not, it's not a political issue. It's really about your own health and what's right for you.
Mhm.
And making that choice, there's, at the end of the day, there really is no right or wrong. It's the choice you make for yourself,
Mhm.
but make it off of, of good information. So, some of my colleagues and I have been joking around getting the vaccine. What is our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle superpower going to be? You
Nice.
know? So
What have you
I
chosen
don't.
for yourself?
I don't have any new superpowers, but I'm
Okay.
probably new humans. Yeah.
But
So,
you had
and
existing superpowers,
yeah,
so
and we can. I can always come back on and like talk a little bit more about the vaccine.
yeah.
And I think that that is really important just so people have that information. But what I will say is like going back to something that you said, like you're ready to see your babies again. You're
Mhm.
ready to like, that's really the thing. I think one of the things that COVID has taught us is that the virtual world, it's all great, like we can do some, like we can do this, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like the actual human interconnectedness and connection is so important. It's never going to go away. It's like who we are. That's how we really thrive. Connecting with yourself and connecting with others when you're really connected with yourself makes it. Yeah. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, I'm a hugger in real life. I
Yeah.
love hugging people. I love putting my hands on people. So I cannot wait. I feel like I want to go on like a hug across America
Oh,
tour.
I like that. Let's
Yes,
go bus.
yes. I mean, listen, I've met so many amazing people on the West Coast. I'm definitely, when things change, I'm definitely heading to the West Coast. I've only very briefly been in Texas, but I absolutely would love to come to Texas and get my hug on there with you. So I'll let you know what my tour schedule when it comes to
Okay.
the
Hugs across America to
across
be
America.
determined hopefully sometime in 2021.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, all right. So normally this isn't where we go, but there's no rules here. Again, there's no rules here. You're allowed to have a cocktail. You're allowed to use all the profanity that you'd like. All is good here. So I want to just give you a chance. I mean, I gave you that little intro, but I really would like for you to just tell everybody a little bit about your group and kind of where that idea came from.
Yeah. So, I'm a working mom, obviously, and I got really to the point of some, really overwhelmed with everything because I felt like I wasn't doing right, by my kids and in my partnership with my husband. We just feel like we have to be so perfect. And probably about 4 years ago now, it all came to a head. And I just really, realized one thing is that, so a couple of things. Number one, we don't talk about stress in the right way. I do say overcome stress and overwhelm, but
Mhm.
really we're not talking about stress in the right way because stress is a part of our lives. I mean,
Right.
it's always going to be a part of our lives. So it's not about doing away with stress or leading some unrealistic life, but it's about closing that stress cycle.
Yeah.
And we're not really taught to do that.
Yeah.
We're a go, go, go society. What are we achieving? What are we doing? When my dad passed away 4 years ago, I think that's when really everything came out because, you had Lisa on last week. And so this grief becomes really important. We're not allowed to sit. I shouldn't say not allowed to, but it's really kind of looked down upon to sort of sit with those emotions.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, you're sad. Well, when are you going to not be sad? Because I can't handle your sadness.
Right.
And
Yeah.
with all of like feeling like we should as mothers, like we want to do the best for our children, and feeling like if we make a misstep that we're quote unquote ruining the rest of their lives, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves.
We do,
Lots of
especially as
pressure.
women, especially as moms.
Yeah. So, it's just my campaign now is to really show women that you can, I don't want to say do it all, be it all, have it all, but you can do it your way.
Yeah.
and you can manage the stress and it can really help propel you. But we've got to close that stress cycle and we got to be very mindful of it. We have to do it every day in certain ways
Yeah.
because once we're constantly on the go, we deplete our systems. So then we crash and then
Right.
like we don't want to do anything. We're not there for the people we want to be there for.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I've said a couple times in the last several weeks that I think my word for 2021 overall, my focus is going to be on being uncomfortable. Right. I mean, it seems that we spent so much of our lives trying to like get back to being comfortable. We don't want to have a deep conversation because it doesn't feel comfortable. We don't want to, talk to our kids about certain issues because it feels uncomfortable. And I just feel like we've gotten to a point in the world where like it's not okay, to just not have the conversations. We have to start learning how just as you said, to kind of close that gap around grief, close that gap around discomfort, right?
Yeah,
And really, you mentioned last week, in speaking with Lisa, we focused on like the energy of, the hangman and kind of going within and really looking at things from a new perspective. And I feel like 2020 has forced us to do that. I mean, the hangman energy is more about us choosing it, but I think 2020 chose that for us. And then, you know, we talked about then, the energy of death, which, is about endings, but it's about like those natural endings, right? Things do work in cycles, right? I mean,
absolutely.
physical death happens, endings of situations happen, and the more we're prepared for it, the more we can appreciate what was there before and what's possible after, I mean, is really what we have to start thinking about, right? Versus the, I don't feel good about having that conversation, or I don't really know what to say, so I'm not going to say anything at all, you know,
Or wanting to fix it too, because
wanting to
it's so
fix it. Yeah.
uncomfortable. It's like, oh, if you're talking to me about it, we need to fix it. And I'll give a recent example. And I don't think my youngest is watching. She's not supposed to be on Facebook. So, anyways, but she's had to do a lot of pivoting. So I really feel for all of the kids out there who they are living in a very different world than what they've been used to, but they've learned a lot through that process. So my daughter has done virtual school since the pandemic started, and then changed schools at the start of this
Mhm.
new school year, and was still remained virtual. We struggled with that because I think she needed to be in person, but she's also a germaphobe, and her anxiety was just going through the roof. But
Sure.
one of the things that she said to me a couple weeks ago, a week ago now, um, is that she just really wasn't liking life at the moment,
Mhm.
and she just didn't feel like she really has this friend support network because she's in a new school. It's all been virtual, so she hasn't been able to really meet people.
Right.
And as a mom, as a mama bear, like we want to kind of swoop in and fix it and say it's
Yeah.
okay. And what I've learned through my mindfulness and really being present and really that uncomfortableness, I said, yeah, it sucks. It
Yeah.
really sucks. And I didn't say it's going to be okay. I didn't say, let's try to figure this out. Because in that moment, what she really needed was just me to be there, hear
Right.
her, and allow her to feel that. We don't allow people to feel things. And guess what? Next day she's like, I'm thinking, oh my God, like, do I have to like get a counselor? As
Right.
a mom, like you're thinking all these things. The next day,
Right.
you know, she's not, I don't want to say she's okay, but like the cycle is that, okay, that gives way to some joy because she
Right.
found something she was, and so we get so stuck in these moments and make them last longer than they should
Absolutely.
by not sitting in the uncomfortableness of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And and I think that I've been going through, I mean, different situation, but with one of my daughters, my daughters are older, I've got grandkids. But
Yeah, I don't believe that, by the way.
I mean, you've seen pictures, so
Oh, but you are
but
too young to have girls the ages you
you know,
do.
I was 5 when I had my oldest daughter. So, we grew up together. We did, I tell people kindergarten was rough, but, I mean, it's really, but, same thing. I mean, as a woman, as a mom, it's never done, right? This work is never done. Learning how to work through our emotions, just because you do it once doesn't mean like you figured it out.
Right.
And so, she and I have been speaking quite a bit about making time now, being forced to have this time where you can't avoid the shit that you packed away before, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Um, at some point, all of that stuff comes back to us. And if we didn't deal with it before, we got no clue what's coming. And I think that's really the message of this week. And I was very intentional with bringing you here this week. I was very intentional with bringing Lisa last week, given her work on these issues of grief and her work with cycles, and we both talk about cycles a lot. And this week feels very like a very heavy week. If you haven't really taken the time to kind of sit with the lessons, learn the lessons that we had from last week, right? So again, last week's lessons were kind of hard. I think of them in like that adolescent kind of phase, right? The first time that you're going through these phases, and you finally get to a point where it's like, wait, I got to do things differently. You finally learn that like shit comes to an end, right? Everything, this first love is maybe not going to be your forever love. Your friends aren't maybe always going to be your friends forever. And then, after that came temperance, and that is that balance, finding that harmony, right? Using what you learned when you made it through all the other lessons, all these other challenges, right? Creating something brand new for yourself, right? So this week kind of starts out with what I think the card people like the least, right? The devil energy. And again, I'll reiterate that it's not the actual like religious manifestation of the devil, which personally, for my faith, I don't believe in the devil. But that energy, and I can bring it up, see if I can pop it up here. I think this one would be better. Can't really see it there. I'll switch it over some here. And this devil energy, I don't love the image on this particular deck. It doesn't do it justice, but really this devil energy is really almost, if you don't kind of learn the lessons, like I said, of what happened before, right? Then there's like this little tapping on your shoulder, right? Of like what can go wrong if you
Mhm.
don't decide to do things differently, right? And I'll bring you that. Um, there is, it often comes up with in terms of like addictions, right?
Yeah.
And again, being in very kind of unsafe, creating unsafe environments for yourself. But anytime really that you haven't allowed yourself to deal with, whether it's grief or loss or any of these negative emotions that are totally natural and are going to happen to all of us, if you decide that I'm just going to not do that, I'm going to put this underneath the blanket and pretend like it's not there, that's when this type of energy comes up, right? And it's very much our own energy, right? It's not even like you put yourself in a bad situation, now you're around the wrong crowd of people. No, this is all you, right? All of these lessons are about things that you are experiencing, that you are choosing, um, based on the decisions that you make in other areas of your life. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that's that kind of first energy, and I'm curious if you have any kind of reflections on that energy.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I think, just also going back to something that you said about, if you don't deal with the shit, it's going to come back, right? And it's going to come back in ways that you don't always recognize as affecting you.
Sure.
So, from my standpoint as a physician, I see this in how it impacts disease.
Okay. Right.
Okay, because all of the stress, it creates this imbalance in us. And that imbalance leads to a lot of the diseases that we have are worsening. It's
Right.
not that everything is 100% preventable, but certainly people are suffering from some of the high blood pressure, some of the diabetes, some of all of the stuff that we're seeing.
Yeah.
Some of it's genetics, and some of it is exacerbated by not dealing with the stuff that we're supposed to deal with. So I can put it to you this way: energy has to dissipate somewhere.
Mhm.
Okay. So if you have energy and you don't want to deal with it, it's going to go somewhere.
Mhm.
And if you don't direct it to where it should go, it's going to find the quickest place to go to. And a lot of times it's in our body.
Yeah.
Right. And so I always talk about being able to respond and not react. So if
Mhm.
you can sit with the uncomfortableness, I love that word that you're choosing for 2021. You
Yeah.
can sit with the uncomfortableness. You put yourself in more so in the power seat to be able to have the choices that you want for your next moves.
Right.
And again, it's not about that bad things are not going to happen or uncomfortable things are not going to happen, but it's just really being able to address it and put it in a different perspective.
Well,
And
yeah.
bad energy. So I don't know if there's a meditation and mindful teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, and what he says is that every positives cannot exist without negatives.
Okay. Mhm.
Good cannot exist without evil.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so your right hand can't exist without your left hand. Now, people are going to say, well, it can get amputated. Obviously, it can't.
Mhm.
But we were made as very symmetrical.
Mhm.
If you think about like how we are on the outside, we just don't have one eye, we have two eyes. Like,
Mhm.
that these opposites are really important in the energy. And
Right.
so one of the things that people should feel at least a little bit of comfort in is that if there is negative energy or bad mojo, there's good energy out there
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And we saw that, a few weeks ago in the lesson of the Wheel of Fortune, that really, even when things look really bad, knowing that things are going to get better, right? And the
Yeah.
reverse to that, you might be, top of your game, but things are going to happen. And it's okay. It's natural. It's normal. And again, I think that's where we're lacking is that we think about even energies, and when we talk about like bad energy, good energy, I mean it's all energy, right? It's all and I mentioned this last week, and I've mentioned to a few people that I've worked with who've lost people that in my opinion there is a finite amount of energy, right? And it's the same energy that existed 1,000 years ago and will exist 1,000 years from now. And to your point, it changes, right? So even in passing, your physical body may not be what houses your energy anymore. And I don't even think about it in a very like esoteric way, but just that the energy that we all possess, like it's been around forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's gone through quote unquote good phases, bad phases. It's just learning to find that harmony between what we think is good and what we think is bad, right? What we think of as masculine energy and feminine energy, right? You need both of those energies. We all have both of those energies. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So, so after that, so this is the other heavy card now that you also got luckily chosen for this week, um, is kind of what happens after, again, if we find ourselves not really dealing with what we think of as the bad situations of the past, yes, things like addictions and depression and things like that can easily set in. But also, what happens, both from a kind of pro and con, and I'll switch over again, is the energy of the tower. And so people also get really freaked out when they see this card, But this is another card about endings, right? So similar to that of, it's funny, I happened to look over. I'm like, oh, you can't see it on your screen. On my other screen, you can see like the devil peeking over here from the side. I'm like, get out of here, devil energy. Um, but the tower energy, and I'll switch me back over, it's also about endings like we saw in the death card, but these are endings that you didn't necessarily see coming, right? So it's like big, shocking things that you feel so like knocked off your game about, um, that can often make us feel overwhelmed. Again, push us into kind of that devil energy. But I look at the tower energy, again, in these life lessons, in these cycles, more in the sense of, oftentimes it's like this rude awakening, right? So a truth that has been there that we've chosen not to look at, right? It's that, asshole you've been dating that is an asshole. You knew when you met him, but you thought, oh, I can change him, or you know, maybe she's not that bad, and then suddenly like they pack up their stuff and your stuff and leave, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. My world is upside down. No, girl, you if you were honest with yourself, then this wouldn't be so surprising, right? But again, based on choices that you made or didn't make, now you're in a situation where you feel like completely knocked off your game, like everything has kind of crumbled, right? And so the messaging really from the tower is that of, um, like needing to let things fall apart, right? So that's the other piece of uncomfort, of discomfort, I think, is that it's okay to let things fall apart, right? Especially things that weren't healthy for you, weren't good for you. Um, Sometimes, like you said with your daughter, we can't fix everything. Sometimes it's not even our place to try to fix it. Sometimes you've got to just let shit fall apart and build something new that's better, that's stronger, that's in more alignment with who you really are, you know? Uh,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
I see that card as a little bit of a, so I may be a weird person here. Okay,
There's no
because
weirdos here.
I know that these are heavy cards, but these cards don't scare me.
Yeah.
Maybe 4 or 5 years ago they would have scared me. And I think that understanding the fear is really understanding yourself. Something is
Right.
scaring you so much, you're not going to want to deal with it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But these cards are really a reflection.
Mm-hmm.
Like if these cards get pulled, it to me it's like saying, hey, let's stop.
Right.
Let's
Yeah,
take a look
absolutely.
at what's going on.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, Mel, that the unexpected thing that happens. Yeah, there sometimes are really unexpected things that happen, like COVID. I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
you know, we didn't, nobody really expected it.
Right.
However, you kind of really look back at what was going on, we really should have expected it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there were things, when there was SARS and there was MERS, and
Right.
even like when we had sort of like the scare of possibly Ebola coming into this country, and really we had some signs of that, that tower was breaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
We,
That we weren't ready. That we
yeah,
just as a society weren't ready for something big. Yeah.
we weren't ready because we try to have we try to prepare for the future, and there's important things, like, so again, like, if I didn't prepare I wouldn't have become a doctor. It just doesn't like sort of fall into you're allowed to
Right.
do
Right.
that. It's not like one day, oh, you want to be a doctor, like, go hang out yourself.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there is some things about preparation, um, but we tend to avoid. Well, some people really do tend to avoid preparing for. They're preparing for their success, but they don't think about some of those things that may happen. So then they are completely taken off guard. And then other folks go the opposite way, and they are always preparing for the bad, and they never. So I can see that tower also
Yeah.
really being like, you don't when the really good thing happens, it's also unexpected and unbelievable because
Right.
you've been like on the opposite end of things. So this card to me really represents a reflection.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, and they really all are. And the way that I kind of describe it to folks, as we've been going through all of these, specifically these major arcana cards. Oh, hey, Wanda. Hey, happy Friday to you too. Is that they are a reflection of where we are, right? They are connecting that idea of, like attracts like. So the cards that are coming up for you, the things that most resonate for you, they resonate for you because that's the energy that you're in right now, right? And so, if I'm doing a reading, let's say with someone, and the Tower card comes up, again, people tend to kind of freak out, and oftentimes it's because there's a situation that they have chosen not to look at, not to deal with. There are some truths that they have left, unspoken, unchecked. If I go back to, the conversations I've been having with my daughter, one of the things that I've really been focused on is like calling out lies that we tell ourselves, right? And so, in a conversation, for example, when she's kind of running scenarios, I'm like, oh, stop. Okay, that's a lie. Okay, I need you to stop. That one's a lie. I was like, I know it's hard hearing your mom call you a liar over and over again, but we have to be that realistic with ourselves, right? That we can't, that discomfort comes from often our inability to really take that step back and say, I've been telling myself this thing for so long that I believe it's true and it's not, you know,
Yeah.
uh, and challenging those kinds of, again, stories that we've learned, stories that we've created, but that's part of all of, this energy of things kind of ending. When you get to a point where you can be really honest as a mom, as a working mom, you know, um, even for me, I was working, I had two girls at home. I went back to college full time. And in my mind, I was like, I'm being such an amazing role model. Like I'm showing my girls like that you can, if like mom can do all these things and all I have to do is show up and go to school every day, life's not that hard. Not that that reflection wasn't true necessarily, but I didn't stop to think that, my kids might see it as like, all right, this is never here, you know?
Yeah.
And so being able to hear the truths, right, all around us sometimes is like hard, but so necessary, you know?
It really is because again, if you listen to it, it puts you in a position of power,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
People don't want people in general, they don't like to feel out of control,
Hmm.
right? But a lot of people do feel out of control, and then there's this semblance of control, right? So like I'll just give another example. It may seem kind of stupid, but you come to my house
Hmm.
and the laundry, it's folded and it's in like our sitting room area because it's like I'm like that's it. I'm good. Like I've got we're gonna do other things. We're gonna talk. We're gonna go in the
Yeah.
kitchen do something. But it's like so if somebody were to come in the house, you'd be like, oh my god, like their house is not put together. Wow, no, I'm living my life. Like I'm not trying to please you,
Right.
right?
Right.
We do that a lot. We try to please other people or live a sense of sensibilities. I'm going to put that in quotation marks,
Mhm.
and it's like whose sensibilities,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so when we're being present, um, some of the women I work with, it's like, well, if I don't do this, that, or the other, like, what are my kids going to think? Like, if I don't go, if I can't go to, the school party, and it
Hmm.
may be important, it may be something you want to do, but maybe if you're working, you can't do that.
Yeah.
But what are the moments that you do?
Right.
So we sometimes bring our kids to those moments and like, well, I didn't do that for you. And they're like, oh, mom didn't do that for me. Well, I try to really focus on what I am doing,
Right.
because they need to see that, right? And again, it's changing that negative energy. So
Yes.
these are, again, it's like this reflection. Yeah, if you feel like, so for me, you know me well enough. Like I see the lightning bolts. I'm like Shazam! I'm like, come bring me the power. I'm like, I'm all for it.
We have too much woo in us. We have too
Yeah.
much woo.
I just, people need to really understand, like, 4 or 5 years ago, and I've been like
Yeah.
completely different, but you can. And it's not that bad things don't happen. I've dealt with so many uncomfortable things this year. And you can have a moment to smile, you can have a moment to be present. It's not all bad. There's a lot of badness, but there is a lot of goodness, and we have to always keep that in mind.
Yeah.
But I do think having this ability to be able to say and have that reflection, and have somebody, or even your inner reflective self, say, okay, what am I, why am I feeling this way? What am I doing? What is the truth?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really exploring that and knowing that when you uncover it. So I think another thing that you and Lisa talked about, and I see last week and this week is so connected, right, is shame.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of that, like not acknowledging those truths, is some of it is like feeling, if I acknowledge that it's some part of that is shameful because of being in those kind of moments or situations. It's not shame. It's just how we learn to try to deal with that to keep some semblance of, you know, not falling apart. Right. So shame plays into that a whole lot as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think ultimately, in the conversations that I know you're having within your group, and that I have with people, and I think as women especially, we need to continue to have is not just helping each other, supporting each other through finding those truths, right? But again, like finding spaces where it's okay to express who you are. It's okay to say, sometimes I freaking hate my kids. Sometimes I freaking hate my partner. Sometimes, like, it's so ingrained in us that we're supposed to hold our shit together all the time. And we're supposed to be great moms and great partners and, great at work and all these things, that we're scared to be honest with ourselves. And then it spirals into all those other things of blame and shame and all these other, harmful emotions that we just have never learned how to get out of those cycles. And, one thing I definitely, you know, say to moms, again, I was, a very young mother. But when I, used to do a lot of trainings with like young mothers, is you may think that you're doing these things for, you're hiding your emotions from your kids, but they see that shit.
Oh,
Like,
they do.
they see it, they know it, they don't know how to interpret it, certainly not any better than you do, but that's what you're teaching them, right? When your kids hear you like crying by yourself in the other room, and then you come out like, "Oh, I'm fine." That there's a message that's coming across there to your kids that they certainly don't understand. And those, that discomfort, really, I mean, you are, on some level, you're giving that to your kids. And
Oh
again,
yeah, you're
they don't,
saying,
they don't know what to do with it any more than you do.
well, and they know you're not fine.
Right. Yeah.
And so, and the biggest truth tellers are kids,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
because they don't have a lot of that,
No filters.
they don't have filters, but they don't also have the complicatedness of life that we have brought to everything,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
They're just, they're like, I don't like peas. I'm not eating peas.
Right. This
You
looks
know,
like throw up. I don't want to have it. Like,
that's right.
okay, thanks. I cooked all day, but all right,
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
And they don't think of it from that, again, it's just this really freshness. Like they're not saying it to be hurtful. So
Yeah.
then, so what do we tell people? Oh no, no. Like, you know, I remember sometimes, like, when I was younger, like, when you go to people's houses with your parents or eating, and like, you may see something you've never encountered before, whatnot. You make a face, and your parents are like, "Don't do that." Like you learn, okay, well, like, don't let anybody know that you might be uncomfortable with what's about to happen here,
Right.
and it conditions. I think one of the things I forget who I was talking to. It was Jocelyn. I was talking to Jocelyn about conditioning, like the things that we're conditioned over and over to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, don't be uncomfortable, don't be emotional, women especially, You know, it's like, don't be an, so you can either be, so, and if you express emotion, you shouldn't express emotion. And if you
Mhm.
don't express emotion, well, you should express a little bit more emotion. It's like,
Yeah.
so you just have to be you, because like, I don't know how to figure out how to do the rest of what's going to make people uncomfortable or not. Like you can
Right.
sit in a room with four people and not know if I'm going to say something or do something that's going to make somebody else uncomfortable. But
Absolutely. Yeah.
what I can say that our expectation should be is that if we do, that somebody says, "Hey, let's talk. You know, you said that, and that really made me uncomfortable. I don't really want to go into it, but just shit's happened in my life,
Right.
and I can be like, I am so sorry. I'm not going to do that again. You
Yeah.
know, like I'll know for that person. It's not like I'm trying to change for everybody, but I'll know I care about you enough to not want to make you, you know, uncomfortable
Right.
because I said something, not realizing what your life experience is."
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And and so that, that moves us into then the last card. It's not all just heaviness around here today for you. But it's funny that you say that because I do want to. I will share a quick story that I tell people all the time, and if my wife is actually watching, she knows I share the story a lot. That early on when we started, when we first started living together. Hey, Mary Kay. Yes, kids always tell the truth.
They
That
too.
we were joking around one day and talking, and I was like, "Oh, you're so silly, jerk," and I continued the conversation and she just immediately shut down. Right. And it's a word that like I use all the time, joking around. I had zero idea like what happened, but all of a sudden she like completely like nothing more to say. Okay, I'm gonna
The energy shifted, right?
and I'm like, what the so I had to ask her like, okay, well, I don't know what happened, and she told me like that word is, I don't like that word, here's my connotations with that word. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, well, I will never say that word to you again. But had I not asked and she not told me, then how easy would it have been for that to be? Because I'm sure I would have said it to her again, to be like a constant trigger that was unnecessary, right?
Right.
It's okay, that's not something you feel comfortable with. And instead of making it like a trigger, quote unquote, um, now now I know, right? I mean, certainly we can also joke about it now. I make a point of joking about it now, like don't make me call you a jerk, So, but it's because we had those conversations and we allowed ourselves the space for that. So, the
And you didn't allow a story to be created, right? So
right,
that's the other thing about dealing with the uncomfortableness is like you could have walked, if you had not asked, we
hmm
both could have walked away. You could have been like, well, I wonder what she was all upset about, and
right,
you know why she wasn't paying attention to me. And she could have said, she just would have been like, well, I can't believe she doesn't know me well enough to know not to call, not to say that.
right, right.
And then you guys go into the, the story world, and then
Yeah,
it
3 years
keeps
later,
going.
it's like, oh my God, I can't believe you're so hurtful to me. So, absolutely. Um, so our last card today is really about rebuilding, right? So whatever choices we've made, whatever we feel as though whether we were honest with ourselves, not honest with ourselves, or things fell apart naturally or out of the blue, there comes a time after you let it all kind of fall apart, or you actually process through it that you have to really rebuild, and that's this energy of the star. Um, and so, the star energy really is about I mean, I use that term rebuilding, but I think replenishing is really the best word for this card. And it is about, finding ways, and I'll put myself back on screen, finding ways to, replenish ourselves and then everybody else, right? And I think, especially for working moms, that that whole notion of like putting your mask on first, it's so hard to think about doing that, right? Because you grew this person or you raised this little person from infancy and you spent all of their life protecting them, And when you get to a point where you just don't have anything to give, the burden is so much more because you're like, well, I have to protect this little life that I've created. But if you don't have it, you don't have it. You know, if
Yeah,
you can't get out of
absolutely.
the bed, how am I supposed to make you food? You know, if you don't have the emotional energy to deal with even happy thoughts, what's going to happen if something doesn't go well? You know, and so that star energy really is about, you know, replenishing yourself first, finding like it's that like beautiful kind of spark of hope, right? Finding faith, not again, not necessarily in a religious sense, but you know, within your own abilities, some faith that like, you know what, I made it through all this shit that happened, and here I am, you know. Really leaning into that, really, you know, finding like inspiration in that reflection of what you went through, you know, of yeah, I made it through, but really having that gratitude, like finding ways to look back and say, man, I learned a lot from that experience. I see so much more clearly now. You know, all of those types of things. And, you know, oftentimes, unfortunately, just I think the way we're kind of built, you have to go through a lot of that shit sometimes to be able to fully be able to show that gratitude, understand the lessons. But that's kind of the, you know, the star energy is that like once all of these things that seem so tragic, you found ways to move beyond them and you're still standing. How can I how can I now find ways to replenish myself and grow even more beautifully than before?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the whole thing we talked about. You know, the energy. One energy cannot exist without the other.
Yeah.
And these three cards is beautiful because you see, you know, this negative, dark, whatever energy, but then you know there's this positive energy on the renewal, the
Yeah.
cycle. You know, I talk about stress as a cycle. There's the adrenaline and non-adrenaline. Says you got to complete cycles. You've got
Mhm.
to go through,
Yeah.
you know, the cycle, and so rest. You know, renew and re-energize. Like
Mhm.
that's what our life cycles are all about. You
Yeah.
know, we're, you know, it's important to be able to do that and to know that you got to give yourself the space to
Yeah.
be able to do that. However that is, you know, we need to create our own communities for ourselves where we can replenish. We
Yeah.
can sit with what we need to sit with in a very supportive environment,
Mhm.
um, and we can create that.
Yeah. Oh,
You know?
absolutely. And we have to. I mean, I think, especially now, right? And we see just how difficult it is in so many ways to not be physically present with people, right? And I think even for, I mean, I'm not an introvert, but I think even for the introverts that I know, like even this is too much. Like, right? Like at the beginning, I feel like they were like, yes, my dreams have come true. I can stay home and no one's going to judge me. But even now, it's like, okay, all right, this is absurd, you know?
Yeah, well,
And
I'm an introvert, Mel,
yeah,
and I'm just Kelly. So it's really, again, it's where your energy comes from. Is it external? Is it internal?
right,
So introverts are internal, but that doesn't mean that that we just have to have space away
right,
to reflection is really important to me.
yeah,
Yeah, like I'm always thinking, you know, and I need that time to be able to do that.
hmm,
Um, but and we all need again, and going back to those points we made in the beginning, we need interaction of some sort, real human interaction.
yeah,
This again is great,
hmm,
but you know, you say like I just really want to be able to come and meet people in person there because there's something really important about that.
absolutely, absolutely. And that's, I mean, that's as humans, we were built to be in community. You know, we weren't built to be in isolation. We can't survive on our own. You know, if we, you know, we have our wings and now we get kicked out, good luck. You know, we're not built that way. You know, we need those communities. Um, and yeah, again, I just feel like, you know, finding ways to replenish ourselves first, like especially for moms, especially for working moms, finding a way to replenish our own energies is going to make all the difference in the world of the level of parent that you really can be, and what you're able to give to your kids. Like, I had written down this, like, be a blessing and blessings will return to you. That kind of notion of like, you got to do that for you first.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's so important, and why I'm so excited that I have awesome friends like you who are doing great works in communities, and both in person and online. It's just so important. So, um, before I tell folks how they can connect with you, I just wanted to know if you had any kind of final thoughts, reflections, about this. It's just, I feel like, I mean, we could talk about this forever, but yeah, there's so much that we are capable of doing. We just have to choose to do it.
Yeah. I think, just to sort of really sum things up, the way that I look at things when it comes to self care. So, obviously, I talk a lot about self care in
Hmm.
the work that I do and as a physician. But this is another part we get wrong, for lack of a better word, all the time. So, like when we talk about self care, people are talking about, exercise and eating and movement, and all of that's important. All of that is incorporated into mindful activities. But self care is about taking care of your soul.
Yeah.
You have to know those components that are important for your soulscape.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you take care of those importance that are important for you for your soulscape,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah. Like,
then you're going to be a whole person.
yeah.
And then you can focus on eating better. I put that in quotations because sometimes I don't really know what that means for because we have so many different kinds of
Got the
ways
big
to eat.
dictionary for that. Yeah.
Yeah, but then you can do those things,
Yeah.
right? So if you think about this hierarchy of needs, the
Mhm.
hierarchy of our inner need is to really be who we are, be what our soul is.
Yeah.
If you don't, and that's like, again, when we talk about conditioning and things, we are conditioned to think that our soul is what everybody else says our soul should be,
Right. Yeah.
right? And as working moms, we're told, well, you can't do it, you can't have it all good.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
either be a good parent or you can be a good worker, but you can't be both. And that's bullshit. I just call bullshit.
Absolutely.
You can do that. Now, if you want to do that in a traditional way, then you're going to be burned out and stressed out and not happy
Yeah.
because you're not taking care of your soul.
Right.
So once you figure out what that is, then you're going to thrive,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever you do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I will say too that, next year, that I'm going to be making some, I don't want to say changes. I'll be adding on some other focuses for 2021. And that, emotional guidance is really like priority. I mean, the flip to sitting in, discomfort or being uncomfortable, and dealing with, working through finding emotional guidance is going to be my number one priority for next year. And so yeah, I mean, definitely, groups again like yours are so important to not just have a space where you can say things, but a space, which is, I mean, so important, right? Again, to have that support, but a space where you actually can practice, right? Get some tools, learn some ways in which you can help replenish, help get on track, help with what, finding, what your soulscape really is all about. So that's a great segue to how can people connect. Wait, let me see if I have this. I'm going to put it in the group here. Um, I'll pop this here so people know your, maybe, will you come up? There we go. That's the Facebook group. I'm going to put a link to it in the chat. And it will show up there. It is. It'll show up there. And yeah, I mean, this is the wonderful group that we've been talking about, that I encourage all the working moms out there to look into. Is there any other way people can reach out to you? Is this the best way? Makes the most sense for you?
Yeah, I mean, come if you want to join the group. That's great. Just a couple of things that are coming up. So the December 28th, we're
Okay.
going to be doing a little workshop on doing your word of the year. So for those that are like, words of the year speak to me a lot. It helps to kind of, you know, your guide, a little bit of a guide. And one thing I'll say, if you do a word of the year, you can change it at any time you want, because
Yes.
your priorities can change. Things can change throughout the year.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing that. And I'm also doing a virtual all-day retreat. It's called Soulscape, so that you can rest, renew, and re-energize. Going to have some cool things using some mindful techniques, but also doing some value work, really understanding what really speaks to your soul. So that day will be about doing all of that and really having this really nice blueprint for how you want to conduct yourself for the remainder of 2021. But yeah, connecting with my group, people can direct message me, or you can also email me at ishmodak@gmail.com. I'm pretty open, I don't have a website. It's in the works, so I can't direct you to that. So these are the main ways to really get a hold of me
It's
right
do
now.
everything. You got to leave some jobs for the rest of us.
Yeah,
Other jobs. Right.
absolutely. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Do you have a date for your Soulscape, or is that
yeah, it's January 30th.
January 30th? Okay. I'm going to put that on my calendar as well.
Yeah, and I've got a nice little, so part of it, you're gonna get a little spa kit,
Oh,
and it'll be part of the work that we do. I mean, so it's gonna, yeah, it's gonna be fun, and it's gonna be relaxing, but it is gonna get into who we are on the inside.
yeah, awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really am so thankful and so honored that we were able to steal you away for a little while from your busy life. I really appreciate that. Stay safe. Stay safe.
Yeah,
Stay safe.
everybody out there, stay safe.
Yeah,
Everybody.
yeah, and I'd love
We
to.
got a lot of frontline people.
Yeah,
Okay, we've got a lot of frontline people. So, and vaccines are getting rolled out to more and more folks, and then it's just a matter of production and
yeah,
having enough for everybody.
yeah, absolutely. So. Thank you so much.
You.
You will definitely see Ish around, in the future. And I will say to everyone, so next week, Friend Friday falls on Christmas Day. And so in lieu of that, there'll be a message that goes out tomorrow. So we won't have Friend Friday next week. Normally I do a card party on the last Friday, but I want people to be able to spend time with their friends and family virtually if they don't already live in the same house. And so there will be a little prize giveaway that happens next week in lieu of me not being live with y'all. So keep an eye out for that. And I will see you next week on Wednesday for Wednesday Woo at 2. Thanks so much for being here, and stay magical, y'all.
Bye.